Hello, everybody. Welcome. Good to see everybody. Today we are really excited. We're excited every time we do a show, but we're really excited this time. We have Kory Stamper, our good friend, back. Her second time on the show. Kory is a lexicographer. Most of you know her, but she's a lexicographer. I got to introduce her. She's author of the book Word by Word. She's author of two books, allegedly, in the making, and she is an expert swearer, which we kind of had a sense she was, but now I think we can officially say she's been a cuss word specialist in the new Netflix series, The History of Swearing. Don't know if you've all had a chance to see it. It's a tour de force of various swear words, and Kory gives us a lexicographer's viewpoint. I want to talk. I want to talk about the books. I always ask you how the books come along, what's new with the books, and you always say, "Well, we don't have a date yet. I don't know." I want to talk about the books, but
Okay.
let's do swearing first, okay?
Dandy.
Dandy. So, history of swearing, history of swear words. Excuse me. I have to. I was corrected by Netflix when I said that wrong, so I have to make sure I get that. Say that right. The history of swear words. We got
Very
clips
important.
from the series that we'll show a little later, and that I had to negotiate with Netflix about what to show and how to present them and things like that. I still don't quite understand what I'm supposed to do here. So, but how did this come about? How did you get involved in doing this show?
It was kind of a weird thing. They evidently the showrunner had seen me do some videos for a website called the AV Club. I did a series of videos there called Vox Populi, where I basically did sort of 5 minutes on the history of common phrases or words used in pop culture. And I did one on asshat, the history and use of asshat, and I did one on vajayjay.
Oh yeah.
And evidently the showrunner saw those and thought, oh, could be interesting. And then she picked up my book, in which I have a chapter on the word bitch, and I talk extensively about profanity and how do you handle profanity as a lexicographer. And then when everything came together, they emailed me and said, we have this thing we would love you to be involved in. Said it's a series on the history of swear words. And I was like, yep, I'm in. I don't have to give me any other information. Whatever you want me to do, I will do it. That sounds great.
Uh,
So I was one of, I think they approached 5 or 6 different specialists in different areas. So I
yeah.
think I was their etymology expert, which makes me moderately nervous, but I think I got everything right. So they double
Okay.
checked it. So it was,
Yeah. Well, you're right. So you did. I didn't. I don't know. They didn't label you. Maybe they did. I don't know. Maybe I didn't notice. But yeah, there were like other. There were. So the show format, in case you haven't seen it, there's a bunch of comedians on the show. Nicolas Cage hosts the show. So I have to ask you, what was it like working with Nicolas Cage?
I didn't actually get to meet anybody.
What?
I
What?
know. I'm not that
Nick
famous.
Offerman, Sarah Silverman? No,
No,
no.
no.
All right.
I have not yet had beers with any of those people. No, because of COVID protocols, everything was filmed in isolation. So the
Mm-hmm.
people that I met in person were the cameraman, the sound guy, and the lighting guy. So even being even when they interviewed me for my part, that was over Zoom, just so that everything was safe.
Yeah.
So
What
so
was
yeah, so
there?
I have no hot goss from the set. I'm very sorry
Yeah.
to say.
Yeah. Was there so they came to your home to do this? Or
No,
did you go somewhere?
we went to an Airbnb in
Oh.
North Philly, which we were gonna do it at my house, but it turns out that my house was not big enough to meet COVID protocols. So
Oh.
square footage, that's fine. So they rented an Airbnb and said show up with wardrobe and your makeup done, and I showed up with 2 blouses, and the camera guy was like, "Oh, that yellow one matches the chair in the background, so you're gonna wear that." So okay.
Right. There is no change of clothing for
No,
different episodes. It's all the
no,
same. Yeah.
no,
Okay.
no.
And when you were, did you have it sort of scripted what you were going to say, or was it all sort of the spontaneous sort of talking?
I mean, I knew what the words were going to be because they told me that. And I knew that their interest for my part was sort of how do these words move through the language? How do people use these words? How has their history changed? So mostly I just kind of prepared from there. The producer who was interviewing me was a really fabulous interviewer, and so if I said something, I was like, I just want to double check the date on that. He was like, fine, I go for it. And so yeah, I prepared ahead of time, sort of knowing they wanted me to talk about the history of these words and sort of where they sit in the language. And yeah, and so that was, but it wasn't a scripted thing. They didn't give me a script and say, here's what you're going to say. They trusted me to say things on my own. Always a dangerous thing, but they also could edit it. So
yeah, I imagine you said some things that were, I mean, probably there's more. There's probably like the director's cut, right? That we could.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's mostly me going, yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. All right, so if you have any questions about all right, we might as well start off with swearing. We're going to put a little disclaimer on YouTube. Language, the words they started out with fuck, started out with a bang, and ended up with damn, which is almost like you get to the end, it's like, damn. And then along the way, I don't know if I can do this in order, but I think it was shit, fuck, shit, bitch.
I think bitch was next.
And then there's, dick. No, it was dick, bitch, or bitch, dick, pussy, and damn. I believe was it. Now that series, that's season 1. Is there a season 2? And what words they haven't talked about?
They have not approached me about a season 2 yet. I hope there's a season 2. From what my adult children who are hip and care about such things tell me, the series was really popular. So maybe there will be a season 2. Yeah,
but what words would you? I mean.
Oh well, I would love to do ass, because that's just it's a great one. I think you would have to do cunt. You'd have to. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we could find some.
Yeah, there's probably 5 or 6 episodes. There's probably
Yeah.
All right. If you have any questions, somebody in the chat. I try not to read the chat. It's very dangerous. Look at the chat. I never thought I'd see Mark Allen use those words. It's for the purposes of this show. I never say that kind of stuff anywhere else. Especially when I used to work in a newsroom, never used any kind of words like that. If you have questions for Kory about any of these words, we will ask you to unmute and say the words yourselves before you ask them. But please feel free. We'll do questions, and why don't we let's do a clip so everyone has a sense of what this is. And this first one is about bitch. Now, bitch was like, there was tons of. I mean, honestly, I don't know if you know how many minutes you appear on screen compared to anybody else, but it's like
a lot.
You got a lot of screen time, and bitch was, you could have just done the whole show yourself. It was just like you were the whole episode. So, but we have let me tell you, Netflix, when they sent clips, they sent 5 clips for us to choose from. 3 of them were from bitch. So tells you how much Kory had to do with that episode. But Heather, can we show the first? You ready to show the first clip? Okay, we've got a clip from the studio of Kory Stamper in History of Swear Words, the bitch episode.
Seems to me that bitch isn't a word, it's a moment, an experience. Other swear words like shit, fuck, damn are reactionary and universal. But bitch can be used like a weapon, and it's personal.
I do still use the word bitch, though I use it a whole lot less than I used to. You know, language is pattern, and if you have learned the pattern of bitch being used as a slur against women, it takes a lot of conscious effort to unlearn that pattern, even if you're a recipient of that slur.
Instead of using the word bitch, I rather refer to women as queens. But I do recognize that bitch hits different. If you on a plane and people start fighting, you gotta be like, bitch, they was fighting. You can't be like, queen, they was fighting. It doesn't go, you know what I'm saying? You gotta show some discernment.
If I ever have a daughter someday, I would much rather her identify as a bitch than a nice girl. I mean, I guess the ultimate goal is for her to be a nice bitch. Like Malala.
On my group thread with like 11 gay men, 7 of which hate me and 3 of which are close friends, will I continue to use the word? Yeah, probably.
The word bitch has gone on a journey from meaning a female dog to then like a slutty woman and now to a great woman like myself. I like it. It's gone on a journey. It's grown. It's growth. You know what that is? That's growth. Good for you, bitch. You started off as a dog and now look at you. You're Cardi B. Good for you.
All right.
Okay. All right. Now, I didn't see any of that. Did did everybody else? Was it just me? Did you see the screen?
I saw the screen.
Kory? You did? Really?
Yeah.
Okay. That's okay. Good. Excellent. Because I have seen it before, but I missed seeing that. So, okay. I'm glad. I was a little panicking there. I heard the whole thing. So, so very cool. Now, let's talk about the etymology of. I like the idea of, and a lot of these words have like different meanings, and we should talk about that. I suppose we should talk about what's in the show a little bit. Bitch is this etymological history, and it has now different ways you can use it in different contexts.
Yeah.
And I think you talked about the pattern of using it, and then sort of rethinking, well, is this really, something I should be using, or how should I be using it? So why is this? Is that something? I'm sure it's not unique to swear words, but is it something that's a particular thing we notice with swear words?
Well, I think with swear words that are also weaponized as slurs, there's this process called linguistic reclamation that can happen, where the object, the recipient of those slurs, can, after a time, decide to take it and turn it around and say, fine, you're going to call me a bitch because you think I'm domineering, then I will just be a bitch. And reclamation is a process by which you remove the sting of the slur and you adopt it as an identity. So I think for swear words that are slurs, you tend to get reclamation. I mean, there's not a whole lot of reclamation that can happen with like a scatological slur, like, because who's going to reclaim that?
But you do get that. I mean, you do get that, not reclamation by somebody reclaiming it, but we do. Shit is, this you see this movie, it was the shit. It was,
right.
A positive.
Right. That's not, I mean, it's not quite reclamation. That's actually kind of usually when that happens, like taking something that is shit, meaning bad, and turning it into the shit, meaning like the best possible thing. That's actually something that tends to happen in slang communities, and that happens a lot. Like bad meaning good, that's one of those. Someone being like, someone saying that that's shit and you are the shit, that's the same sort of thing. It's not quite reclamation because it's, I mean, it's similar. It tracks the
Yeah.
same kind of way, but reclamation's usually used with slurs, things that can be taken as an identity. So like the shit is something that could be applied to anything that's good, not just a person who has been called shit becoming the shit. That would be reclamation. But saying like this movie's the shit that's just kind of an evolution. And there are lots of words
Right.
that develop the inverse of their original meanings, contronyms we call them, and sometimes sometimes profanity gets that too.
Are swear words difficult to define because they do tend to have so many different sort of nuanced meanings in different contexts?
They are only difficult to define in that lexicographers rely primarily on written English, and really up until the early 1900s, maybe late 1800s, you don't see a whole lot of published, widely read uses of fuck or things like that. So in terms of, I mean, now, thank you, internet, we can get all of these digitized copies of like penny dreadfuls or of, brothel catalogs from the 1700s that let you know.
Brothel catalogs?
Oh,
what is
yeah,
a brothel catalog?
There were these, I forget what the technical term for them is, I'm very sorry, but there are basically pamphlets that would be given to travelers as they come to big cities saying, here are the gay houses, not gay as in homosexual, but like gay house was kind of a euphemism for a brothel, or like, Mrs. Johnson's boarding house, clean and, delightful young ladies, this sort of thing. It'd be handed out to travelers. But it was, these kinds of things were not traditionally kept as record worthy, but some people have collected them and digitized them. So now that you can find more stuff on the internet, you can absolutely find new meanings. I mean, I think the thing about profanity that makes it fun to define is that you can, for the most part, you can pretty clearly trace the evolution of meanings through them. It's a pretty straight line for most of them. One of the last batches of words that I compiled at Merriam-Webster were all of the words that had the word shit at the beginning of them. And just going through and seeing like the tremendous lexical imagination that people employ in coming up with compounds that use the word shit or new meanings of the word shit, and even the ways that sort of like shit's a good example because it's now sort of has this generalized, like it's a vulgar word that means thing, right? Like get your shit out of my apartment, or get your shit's in the garage.
Stuff.
Like yeah, which is like I find that to be just a lovely evolution of an offensive word.
It is very interesting, yeah. And how many swear words have you played a hand in defining?
Let's see. I did the shit series at Merriam. When they started redoing their unabridged dictionaries, this would have been a while ago, 2010, 2011, something like that. I worked on fuck, so I got to say that I put the adjective fucking and the adjective fucked up into the unabridged dictionary.
They weren't in there before that.
They were not. Well, no, because they were revising the dictionary for 1961, and that dictionary, Webster's Third, notoriously omitted the word fuck, and so we were catching up, basically. I've worked on the entry for bitch. I have worked on the entry for asshat. I don't know if I would call that profanity.
Well, yeah, I mean...
Yeah, I guess.
It has ass at the beginning of it. I mean, certainly a damn is a profanity. Damn was interesting because a damn is, in the show, the last episode, I mean, it almost... the idea is it's not really a swear so much anymore. It's just sort of a thing, a mild thing we say. But then it has this religious beginning. So so it used to be, if you look at the old swears, they're all based on, sort of religious blasphemy, taking God's name in vain. So, is there an evolution there that are we more? Is there like a? I mean, you got the so you got the religious, you got the scatological, you got the sexual. Is there trends there that we're seeing, and is there somewhere we're going with that?
I don't know. I mean, religious swears, we really don't. I mean, we don't use them much anymore, just because I think religion probably doesn't play as big a part in our social makeup as it used to. And I think we really kind of I like to call it the Deadwood barrier. So if any of you have seen the show Deadwood on HBO, it's best known for its tremendous amounts of swearing, which some of that is historical, but much of it is not, because actually, like, goddamn in the 1800s was a pretty strong swear still. But I think you start seeing damn in particular and any kind of religious swearing. I mean, really the biggest sort of religious swearing we have in American English anyway, and I think in British English, is variations on damn, and then variations on God. So you'll see things like you read Shakespeare or you read Christopher Marlowe, you'll see like strong oaths or things like God's blood or God's wounds or swoons, which now just sound like cartoon noises to us, like wah. But we've as a society, I think, because religion doesn't play as big a part, those things just don't have the same punch. Now, post-Victorianism, where both sex and bodily functions became incredibly embarrassing, and especially in America, we come from Puritan stock, unless you're one of the people who developed from felonious stock, or you were native. There's this like we're a Puritan based society in America, and so the idea then of speaking explicitly about sex is like that's still a taboo. So I think some of it is just this follows kind of broader social trends. And honestly, I think some of it too now has to do with I always sort of think about what gets bleeped on a TV show. That's still profane. Like, that's still vulgarity. If it doesn't get bleeped, they're kind of like, well, it's not really offensive anymore, right? Like like no one, I remember when they used to bleep the word crap, right on Hill Street Blues or on, Moonlighting. That's how old I am. Or they'd bleep out words like ass, or sometimes some shows would even bleep out words like hell and like damn, and now like nobody bleeps those out except maybe Sesame Street. Like, it's just like there's just not.
I don't think there's any bleeping on Sesame Street.
There should
not
be
yet.
though.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that there's all of these words follow an evolution, and there's just different societal pressures that move these words over the line to profane or back over the line to not profane. It just depends.
Yeah. We have a couple of questions at least, so let's see what Heather has for us waiting in the wings.
We do. We have two questions. First one is from Susan. Susan, go ahead and mute.
Hi, Kory.
Hey.
Loved you on the show. Big fan. My question was again about bitch, which was my favorite episode because all the women got really worked up. It was awesome. And I was just wondering, what is the story on bitch as a verb? Quit your bitching. She's bitching at me, So
right.
That would be Yeah, if you could answer that, thank you.
Yeah. So bitch as a verb is an offshoot from the noun, referring to a mostly coming from the idea of like a difficult or querulous. I don't know how you say that word actually. Argumentative woman. So originally bitch was a dog. Then it was moved, its first move away from dog was to refer to a lewd woman, right? So like parallel to the uncontrollability of a dog in heat, and then it became an uncontrollable woman, and that's sort of the same arc of uncontrollability. And from there, like the uncontrollability took like a little left hand turn and had to do more with someone who was argumentative, who created too much of a stink. And from there, that's that sort of argumentative creating a stink. That's where we get the verb bitch, meaning to complain. And I believe we get the verb bitch, meaning that sort of evolves to mean complain. And then that loans a meaning back to the noun later. So we can say, you know, it was a bitch session. Like that's a noun use, bitch. I think. I might be wrong. But anyway, I mean.
That's logical.
Right. But there's.
Sounds right.
Sure. But that's the other thing about the evolution of all of these words is that they, you know, we tend to think of word meaning as being linear and logical, right? So we think like, oh, we have meaning A, which moves to meaning B, to meaning C, to meaning D. And then we get a verb, and that goes A to B to C to D. And it's language is not logical, right? Language is human, and humans are a hot mess, which means that there's just a lot of movement between parts of speech. And sometimes, you know, a new meaning actually calls back an older meaning and changes it. So that's one of the fun things about tracing the etymology of all these words, right? Is that it's not actually linear, but you can, with words that are profane, because their development tends to, you can follow the development maybe a little easier than a word like, I don't know, general, which is a really convoluted word to define, by the way. It becomes so much, it just becomes a lot of fun to see like, oh, it goes here, then it comes back here, and then it goes over here, and then it goes over here. So that's where, I think that's where the verb comes from. If I'm wrong, you may fire me.
Okay, or we'll have a follow-up later. Email everybody. Kory, mea culpa.
Yeah, Kory was wrong.
Yeah.
So
and
our
we
next
have
one is from Barbie. Hey. Barbie, whenever you're ready.
Hey, Kory.
Hey.
So do you find yourself having to catch yourself in polite company or formal situations and stop yourself from dropping curse words that come maybe a little more naturally to you because you do use them pretty comfortably in a professional setting? Like, is it easier for you? I find like a mental barrier that I can kind of catch myself. Oh, that's not an appropriate word. Do you have no barrier?
No, I do. Before coffee, I have no barrier. No, I do find myself catching myself. And so here's something that's interesting. I used to work harder in different settings to not swear. And it was much more of a conscious effort. And I have found that I actually can code switch much better now. Very weird, but there it is. And in a professional setting, these words, you know, I there's a big joke in bitch where I'm talking about being at my desk or one of my new coworkers being at her desk and hearing two editors walking by talking about what kind of language should be in this particular dictionary, and they're like, well, it's got asshole in it. I mean, well, you know, should we put cock in? Should we put, you know, all these words that like, but because they are disembodied as words for all of us in the office, it's like, oh, okay. Now, one thing that's interesting to me about working for a British company now is, of course, like, Brits handle some of these words very differently than Americans do. and none of my coworkers swear in the office. They're all very like polite, lovely, wonderful people. I'm like the loud American, and and I don't swear at them, but even things like if I'm going through if I'm going through the data set, like it still trips me up. Like, oh yes, they use cunt very differently than we do.
Right.
So, but no, I've gotten better at like the filter is moving further back from my tongue and like more back into the brain, so I don't actually have to filter as much. Though I do still, yeah. I will occasionally, I will occasionally drop an F-bomb in front of like someone's child, and I'm like, oh.
Really? See, I've always thought of you as an adroit, careful person with words in general and with swearing in particular. Well, whenever I've heard you swear, it's always seemed very appropriate for the moment, and I think that's one thing that I think we're probably accepting. Maybe this is just my snobbishness, but I see the well-placed swear. I appreciate it. It's fine. It's sort of the I can't think of a word, or I'm going to use it as an intensifier 5 times in a sentence. That's when it gets to be have a negative view for me. But
yeah, so my father was a construction worker, so I am well educated in the swearing arts. Some of it, I think some of that response, for me, because I did have this period where I was like, must you say fucking all the time? Like, but I also think some of it is, I've learned to see that as someone's comfort level with me. So I have a friend who lives in Boston, and her neighbor is like old school Revere, and he's like every other word is fact, and it's so, but he's so unself-conscious about it that it's kind of like I don't know this guy, we're hanging out on his lawn, this is how he talks, great, like fine. Now if I were to like show up in like a turnaround collar and say I'm ordained, then he might soften a little bit of it, but even then it's kind of like, yeah, this is how people talk, and some people use more profanity and some people use less, and some people use it to great effect, and some people use it as an intensifier, like or like, and it's all part of English.
I just recall a time that I was new at the Grand Rapids Press. I had just started there, working there for a week or two, and there was another copy editor. Back in the old days, you used to have copy desks, and a bunch of copy editors working together. And there's an old guy who coached hockey, and they played against Marquette, where I had just moved from, and this is youth hockey, and they didn't score. Marquette beat them. This team didn't score, and so I was kind of ribbing him, talking during a lull, and across from, and I kind of said, "Oh, I didn't even dent the net once," and he said, "Fuck you, Mark," and I knew that when he said that, I felt so a part of the copy desk then, because it was like he was comfortable to say that to me, and I said, "Wow, I guess I'm one of the team now." So,
yep. Oh yeah, yeah.
Interesting. We have at least another question, maybe a couple.
We do. We have one from Kate about asshat. Kate, whenever you're ready.
All right.
Hi, I'm reading word by word right now, and you are hilarious. I keep people awake when I giggle at night. I am curious about the origins of asshat, because I've started to hear it a lot in like network TV, when it seems like they're trying to swear but they can't swear, so they're using that instead. And I think somebody else mentioned where they were watching a show and there's like motherfucker is beeped out, but fuck was just fine. And I'm curious. Well, I'm curious first about the usage on set for asshat, where that may have come from, and then also any thoughts about the TV thing.
Okay. So I'm winging it, going off of memory. Asshat's first use was in sort of elliptically in the movie City Slickers, which is 8 million years old at this point.
Wow.
But there's a point where I think it's Billy Crystal's character is talking about somebody who's very attractive and says he would like to wear their ass as a hat. And so, because why not? Because that
I don't know what that means.
Fine. I mean, hey, different strokes, different folks. So, so that begins the sort of ass hat, and then it kind of disappears for a little bit, and then shows up a little bit later in pop culture kinds of places. So like there's a Doonesbury cartoon that plays on this, doesn't use the word ass hat because it's syndicated cartoon, where the idea of you are so dumb, your head is so far up your ass that you are wearing your ass as a hat. And that's where it gets its current meaning, right? This idea of like an ass hat is someone who has no social graces, is perhaps a little irritating. And so asshat has pretty much stayed, that's the meaning that it has retained for the last 25, 30 years at this point, probably closer to 30 years. And it's one of those words that's kind of, like shit heel is one of these words where you're kind of like, it's just a word that means an irritating person. But when you stop and think about it, you're like, wait a minute, like how does, what's the, okay. So that's sort of the general arc of asshat. I think, it shows up a lot online, and I think that's kind of how it ended up being popularized is this is also the rise of internet writing, blogs, back in the old day when you could, when places like Salon was just a blog, and Slate was just a blog and not a news source. So that's asshat. As for how things get bleeped on TV, oh yeah, someone said from that 70s show. Yes. That's its first rise into
Not really used in the 70s though, but
no, but that's okay.
yeah.
So as for what gets bleeped on TV, that is a convoluted and complex thing that depends on where you are, what time of day it is, what show you're watching, what channel you're watching it on, who the intended audience is. I mean, it used to be when I was a kid in the 80s, everything got, like, first off, when I was a kid in the 80s, no profanity until 9 p.m. Like the 9 p.m. slot dramas, that's where you could have someone curse. And usually it was crap, ass, damn, and hell. That was it. There was no cursing on The Cosby Show. There was no cursing on Night Court. There was no cursing in any of these shows. And then as sort of, there was, so you'd have like these little breaches. I think it was NYPD Blue, I want to say, which is an old show, like had used shit, and it was there was a big fight with the FCC about whether it should be bleeped or not. And usually in these shows they didn't bleep, like in the 9 p.m. drama slot, they didn't bleep the words. There was just an understanding back in the 80s and 90s that you don't use these words. We kind of let some of them slide, some of them not. And I feel like NYPD Blue had a shit that was like, whoa, big brouhaha.
It was like before the show aired, I remember there were stories, and so I tuned in to watch to see how it was played.
Right.
And it was sort of like, well, it's in context, it's okay. And if I remember right, it was sort of like there's a a loud motor car, something, there's some sort of noise or something, then somebody in the background on the street is, yell shit.
Right.
But it's like
I
background.
I don't even remember. I just remember the big kerfuffle ahead of time that someone was going to say shit on network television.
Yeah.
So a lot of what ends up getting bleeped and not bleeped has a lot to do with sort of how much are you going to get fined if you put this in and they don't bleep it. Nowadays, if you're watching something on TV, they'll bleep the words. It used to be they had a TV cut where they had people say, so for Snakes on a Plane, the iconic Samuel L. Jackson line was, "I want these Monday to Friday snakes off of this monkey fighting plane." Or maybe it was the other way around, monkey fighting Monday to Friday. I don't remember, but right, it's a way of sort of getting around the censors. And so a lot of what pushes the boundary forward is a show willing to pay a big fine to have this word on? And then, it's once NYPD Blue says shit, then suddenly it's okay to say after 9 p.m. And, once, I don't know, Malcolm in the Middle says, "God damn it," once, then it's okay to say damn, from the 6 p.m. to the 9 p.m. slot. I think it's interesting when, words like motherfucker get bleeped, but fuck won't. Some of that depends on context. And there is sort of this, motherfucker feels stronger because there's a personal family connection implied, right? And so it feels like, so it just depends on 1,000 different things, and most of it comes down to how much money will you pay.
Right. So Kate mentioned Word by Word, your first of 3 books, and maybe more, but the only one actually available.
Yes.
And you have a chapter here on bitch, an entire chapter, and there's this great part of the Netflix series is Nicolas Cage looking through the Merriam-Webster book and the bitch entry, and he's angry because there's nothing in it that says it's offensive or it's a term we use for a woman in this situation. It doesn't actually say. Now, is that so I know you write about that now. Is that something that was an oversight, or was it simply the guy who wrote it just wasn't really thinking tuned in?
So it's kind of a weird combination of both. So when bitch was first entered into Merriam-Webster dictionaries, it was entered in sort of genteel dictionary-ese, right? So you got words, they wouldn't just say it's offensive. They would say something like a term of abuse for a woman. Which, in the 30s, okay. In the 60s or in the 50s, the entry was fully revised. And the person who revised it was Mary K. Weir, Miss K, or Mary Weir K, sorry, Miss K. Miss K was a force to be reckoned with at Merriam-Webster. She was a science editor. She took no shit. And when Miss K wrote an entry, you said okay. So Miss K revised the entry for the 3rd. And her original revision, it uses a lot of words that nowadays we would be really horrified with, like trollop and virago. Words that if you know what they mean, you'd be horrified. Otherwise, you have no idea what those words mean. And I don't believe she said, I'm going to pull it up so I can make sure I get this right. I don't believe that she wrote that it was an offensive word. I think what she said was it was, yes, a generalized term of abuse. And then for the meaning for a malicious or domineering woman, her proposed revision said usually used disparagingly. And then she included a sense for bitch used of men and said it was usually disparaging. So that was her revision. Now, the way that the third went, and if you're interested about the history of the third, which if you're interested in dictionaries, you should be, because it's kind of this iconic dictionary in modern dictionary writing. And as I say that, it just sounds so stupid, right? But anyway, there are a couple of different books on the subject. David Skinner's The Story of Ain't is a good one that gives you kind of a general sense as to why this became such a controversial dictionary.
Story of Ain't?
Story of Ain't, right there. But what happened is the third basically became like a business boondoggle. Like it was perpetually behind, it was perpetually over budget, and its production followed a parabolic logarithmic curve, right? So like there's this very steady increase, and then it's just like, oh my god, we're getting so blah, blah. Everything goes this way. Which means when you get to that point in any kind of, you're all editors, you know this, when you're pressing a deadline, there are just certain things that you're gonna do that if you had more time, you would handle differently. And the entry for bitch is one of those things. So Miss K wrote the entry, and another editor, a man, Daniel Cook, edited the entry. And what he did was he basically said, we just don't have room for a whole bunch of these things. And so he just deleted the meaning for man. He deleted both of the disparaging usage notes. He deleted trollop and slut, I think, which were two of the words that were used. And that's the entry that went in. Now, the problem is that the third then became the primary data set, we would call it today, for the collegiate dictionaries afterwards. And so what ends up happening is over the years, we have this one sort of usage note used as a generalized term of abuse that gets attached to one meaning and means kind of nothing. Like, I'm a lexicographer, I don't quite know what generalized term of abuse means. Like, does that mean that we use it generally of a whole bunch of people? If so, then why is it attached to this one meaning for a lewd woman? Generalized meaning, it can be, that the generalizations made about women are that they are lewd. Is it, what's a term of abuse? Does that mean it's a slur? Is it offensive? Is it disparaging? What does that mean? So it just made it all the way through with sort of like, well, that usage note's going to be fine. That communicates that you shouldn't use it. And through like in the 90s, a woman editor at Merriam-Webster, who was not me, said we should put a note on this. And the editor-in-chief at that time said, we already have a note on it. It says it's a term of generalized abuse. And it wasn't until 2000, I think I wrote the note in 2015, and it was published in 2017 that we called it offensive. And part of why we put the note in is because a generalized term of abuse doesn't mean anything. It doesn't tell you that that word is offensive. It just assumes that you kind of live inside of a lexicographer's head and know what's intended, and that doesn't help anybody. And nobody should live inside a lexicographer's head because it's a horror show in here. So that's the sort of arc of how bitch got defined in the modern Merriam-Webster dictionaries.
Okay. We promised thank you for that. We could definitely use another half hour, obviously, or another hour. I don't know. But very interesting. It's in the book. It's in a little bit. It's in the TV show on Netflix, and then a little bit in Kory's book, word by word. We promised we would show another clip from Netflix of Kory talking about pussy. So a little bit of etymology there. So let's get to that.
The earliest meaning of pussy is as a slang term for a cat, and that's in the early 1500s. Immediately afterwards, it becomes a term of affection used for a specific woman, like darling or gal. A woman that you have affection for might have cat-like features, right? She's cuddly, or she's sweet, or she's tender. There were pamphlets and screeds from 1583 that uses pussy as a pet name for a wife. The phrase says, taking a saucy boy and making him marry a woman so that he has his pretty pussy to huggeth. Pretty soon after that, pussy comes to refer to female genitalia.
Pussy, I think, comes from cat because it's like furry and feminine.
Because these meanings all come in at the same time, there are competing theories as to where the word comes from.
Theory 1 is that the word was derived from the Germanic call sounds used to attract a cat. Theory 2 is that the word stems from the Scandinavian word in Old Norse, referring to a pocket pouch or purse.
The idea of a pouch or a bag, something that's a receptacle, that's there to be filled.
Okay. This one's different. I guess you can say all the swear words are unique, but this one is like the one that's not like, you don't really use it in anger. It's like, you know, you don't hit your thumb with a hammer. I suppose you could call yourself, you know, you could use it directed at somebody, you know, there's that meaning of it.
Right, right. Yeah, it's one of those profane words that's kind of, it's used very early on as objectification, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we go from, you know, the genitalia to then it represents a sex partner, always a woman, reduces a woman to her genitalia, right? So it's not great. And then it flips and it's used as a slur against men because they're perceived as being weak or effeminate like a woman. And again, we reduce women to their parts, and that's all. So, but yeah, it's not, I mean, it honestly, it doesn't have the right phonotactics for like a word you would shout in
Phonotactics. I'm not familiar with that word.
Phonotactics mean the way that the sounds all work together for the more like the way the word works. So
okay.
So like fuck has great phonotactics for like as an interjection, right? You start with the fricative F. It's got a back valve, so you can draw it out or you can punch it. Ends with a hard K. So that's a great, that's a good word for like you hit your thumb with the hammer and you yell fuck, because it's just like, bah! It is a short, sharp shock. Pussy is just too sibilant. It doesn't end right. It doesn't have a sharp ending. There's too much of the S in it.
It's one consonant and then, well, S. It's all these soft letters after the P.
Yeah.
Even that's not, yeah.
Yeah. So like, yeah, it wouldn't feel effective, I think, as an interjection in anger.
Okay.
That's my completely expert opinion on a thing I know very little about.
That's terrific, and this is terrific. This is so much fun, but we're already at an hour. I haven't asked you about the books yet. Tell me, just give us a quick update. Where are the books? When are we going to be able to rush out to the store and buy these books?
Okay. 2 books in various stages of production / writing right now. I just turned in the manuscript for a book on defining color, and in particular, the way that color and color words, color names, got sucked into the great government scientism of the 20th century. So that is it's a story, and takes lots of weird turns. So that book is probably not coming out for a little bit, because right now I'm focusing on my next book, which is tentatively titled Mother Tongue, the hidden story of how women made the English language. And so that's going to be looking at, now that we have all these things that are digitized and we can access things like, you know, like a 12-year-old schoolgirl's diary from 1938, or handwritten letters from women to their daughters in the 1700s, or the hand-kept journals of women on the frontier. We can actually, linguists are starting to analyze that language, and we're finding that actually women contributed a lot to how English has been shaped. So that's what that book is about. I have no pub date for either of them. I'm sorry. It's because I'm a slow writer, and you are not the only ones frustrated by my lack of quick writing. But
you did word by word. Yeah, but word by word, like famously, like you did it in like 6 weeks, like lock yourself in a room with a typewriter
like
and
that, yeah. Yeah.
Not really, but
don't do that, kids. I did write it very quickly. It was not good for my children lived on nachos basically for about a year while I did that.
They probably appreciated that.
Yeah, that's fine.
We don't have time for one more question, but we're gonna do one more question anyway.
Our last one's from Pam.
All right.
Hey, Kory.
Hey, Pam.
Do you have favorite swear words, and if so, why?
I do really like the word fuck. It's very versatile. In terms of like specific swear words that that are not just versatile, like I do like the word shitheel. I think that is a great word for somebody who is an unpleasant person. But really, like, I mean, fuck just has everything you could want in a swear word, right? You can easily turn it into an adjective. It can be infixed, right? You can say abso-fucking-lutely. That's something you can't do with pretty much any other swear word easily. Lots of verb meanings. It can be a positive intensifier. It can be a negative intensifier. I mean, yeah, it's, you know, who
right.
wouldn't want a swear word like that?
If we only had that snap polling thing ready to go, we could ask everybody to weigh in on their favorite swear word. But maybe we'll do that on another show. And we have to have you back now because you got these books coming, and so you know we'll have you again to talk about your new book. Thanks very much, everybody. Thank you so much, Kory. It's been a real pleasure. We're going to be back in a couple of weeks with another show, of course. Cynthia Williams is going to be our guest in 2 weeks, and we'll see you then. Thanks so much.
Cool. Thanks, all.